Greetings, Temple Legends. Your favorite mentor, Arhon Okvals here. The temple is not yet open. I'm still working on the second temple semester format while recovering from the holiday season here in the Balkans. However, it dawned on me that the first temple semester is over 10 hours and 30 minutes long, holy fucking shit, and forcing you to go through all that content to get to the most important lessons is cruel. So I've decided to take the 5 most important lessons from the first temple semester and compile them here. These are lessons that creators, regardless of medium, can make great use of. If you're not a creator but an audience member, then you can identify, appreciate, and support creators who apply these lessons by learning the theory. Now, if this is your first time in the temple and you have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, I'm Arhon Okvals, this is the temple, and in the temple we love and appreciate video games, as we try to learn the most important lessons they offer, through sophisticated teaching and learning methods. Those who learn and pass on the temple lessons, be they creator or audience member, are known as the Temple Legends. All caught up? Great. Quick temple warning before we start. This lesson recap will include spoilers from the following games. So if you've not played some of them, perhaps your best course of action would be to tread lightly. So without further ado, let's go over the best of the first temple semester before we truly leave it behind for good. The OBE, or Ongoing Background Event, is without a doubt the most valuable, but also the easiest lesson for a creator to implement into their world and story. It can create an entire layer of engagement and immersion if the original premise of your story fails to do so, or otherwise be a great complement to it. So now let's remind ourselves how exactly it does that.
Fortunately, thanks to David, I now know where to look.
Black and gold color ambient? Check. Mysterious man in a suit smoking a cigar? Check. A cabal of unknown powerful individuals discussing their plans for the world with an eerie message at the end? Fucking check. That, my beautiful temple people, is how you set up a proper OBE, or OBE. Once again, I make a reference to a term I covered in detail only in my first Gothic video. However, none of the games I covered so far have OBEs as strong as Gothics and Deus Exes. Oh yes, I see we have a question. Right, sorry, it's been a while since the first video. I've come up with a more clear definition this time. So, an OBE stands for Ongoing Background Event. As the name implies, it is an ongoing event that is happening in the background of the main story. It is characterized by the fact that it can never take center stage during the course of a given story. Its main purpose is to expand your world in the eyes of your audience by making them feel like the story they are currently involved in is but one of many. The best way to use an OBE is to have the denizens of your world refer to it throughout the story, pointing out the effects it has on the world. An OBE can be a war raging in another part of your setting, a plague, or an unfolding conspiracy by a powerful group. Another great thing about the OBE is that it can serve as a great plan B for audience engagement. If you fail to pique their interest with your main story, a well-implemented OBE just might get their attention. You can have a main story without an OBE, of course, however I think you then run the risk of your audience feeling like the world only exists for the main story, and that there is nothing else outside it. You can also use multiple OBEs, however be careful not to overwhelm your audience with info. Now let's see how the developers of Deus Ex Human Revolution use the conspiracy OBE to further enrich their setting. The year is 2027. It is a time of great innovation and technological advancement. For the first time in human history, thanks to the miracle of augmentation technology, people are able to surpass the limits of the human body. Cybernetics, pharmaceuticals, and nanotechnological implants have basically paved the way for the human 2.0 to emerge. Cybernetic limbs, eyes, and even organs have given many people a new chance at life, whether by helping maimed veterans or those suffering from crippling diseases. However, as with anything that has great potential for improving the human condition, Many also saw the potential for the misuse of this wondrous new technology. The fear of the unknown played its part, and soon a strong opposition to augmentation was formed. This fear was enhanced by a mysterious cabal of wealthy individuals, hoping to sow further discord among the general populace. By playing on their fear of the unknown, they hoped to control the progress and very evolution of mankind. Haha, fiction. The interference of this mysterious group caused riots, murders, and a general state of perpetual fear across the entire country. Furthermore, they helped divide the country on the issue of augmentation, to the point that violence against the other side is justified. Haha, fiction. This divide created by the OB also divides the Deus Ex fanbase. Do you agree that human augmentation should be unregulated and free to develop? Do you believe it's playing God and should be completely banned? Maybe you fall somewhere in the middle and believe it should be heavily regulated. You see that? That is another benefit of a properly implemented OB. It makes your audience naturally debate amongst each other and ask their own questions about the world. This, of course, only grows their attachment to your IP, ensuring a loyal fanbase over a long time. So now that we've been reminded of what an OB is and how it benefits your work, let's see how you can use it. This is another great universal lesson for all creators, so pay attention. It doesn't matter if it's the main story of a book, TV series, or video game, an OB is a handy narrative tool. To create a well-aligned OB, start with these two simple questions. What else is going on in my world, and how does it affect the main story? From there, you can take something like a war, a magical phenomenon, an ancient curse, and have them happen at the same time as the main story. Ideally, have the protagonist learn about it through the comments of side characters. However, remember the most important rule. Do not resolve the OB during the course of the main story in your first book, game, or movie. You can eventually bring it into the spotlight as a reward for the audience's curiosity, but not before you give them a good bit of time to speculate on it. As mentioned, you can have multiple OBs, but make sure they don't overwhelm the audience, and ideally complement each other. For example, you can have a war raging in the background while at the same time an epidemic of demonic possession is happening. Now that we've covered the benefits of the OB and how to use it, let's move on to... Although proper preparation is a very recent lesson we covered in The Witcher 3, it is nevertheless of great value to all creators and audiences. Hence why it's in the recap. In an entertainment landscape saturated with instant gratification, proper preparation is a technique which delays gratification in the best way possible for your game, movie, or novel story. And now let's go over how it achieves just that. If there were two words to describe modern gaming, they would not be delayed gratification. It seems like the Dragon Age 2, you press a button and something awesome happens mentality has really become the norm these days. Now there is nothing inherently wrong with that, but as with all monopolies, it's good to consider what was lost. For example, proper preparation time before an encounter. That sweet anticipation as you're buffing up your character, reading up on proper strategy, and equipping the proper tools, which gives every encounter that ideal crunch on the outside and the delicious moistness within. There are games which apply proper preparation as part of their gameplay, but none quite so well, quite so in sync with the lore as The Witcher 3. Huge disclaimer before I go into detail, proper preparation is not min-maxing. We aren't respeccing Geralt's stats to be optimal for every encounter, taking only a set of specific powers for maximum damage, or exploiting the AI. Too much. No, proper preparation is about the immersion that comes from taking the time to adjust your strategy for a given encounter. The reason Witcher 3's preparation stands above the rest isn't just because it fits the lore like a glove, but because it is taught to you via an immersive system in the form of Witcher contracts. You might think I'm only referring to Witcher potions, blade oils, and signs, but that's actually the last step of the process. Like any professional exterminator, Geralt's contracts begin with asking questions. Where did you last spot the monster? Any distinguishing features you noticed? Is it an EA executive? Once that's done, you wait for Roach to teleport behind some house and run to him. You go to the spot where the monster was last sighted, and you use that sweet Witcher sense. Now I know some people shit on this and say it's used too much, but I disagree. Geralt is a monster hunter. I want to be immersed in said role of a monster hunter. Toggling a mutated sixth sense, no matter how basic it is, absolutely does wonders for immersion. Press a button and something awesome happens? Well, the Witcher sense is an example of this done right. It always feels immersive to me rather than repetitive. Anyways, once your Witcher sense is active, you search the area for clues. Footprints, smells, injuries on the body, leftovers from the monster, or even sounds all make for a natural and fun part of the proper preparation process. Finally, once all the info has been gathered, Geralt can conclude what kind of monster it is, and devise a proper stratagem. This is where the fantastic bestiary comes in. Apart from just having cool monster lore, you'll actually get recommended tools for the job, if you've faced this type of monster before. If not, you either have to check what works against monsters of a similar type, or make your best guess based on what you learned as Geralt. And then, at last, we come to the catharsis, the encounter itself. I can't stress how rewarding it feels to see all your proper preparation pay off. The oil on your blade doing extra damage, the sign you cast weakening the monster, the potion you took sharpening your senses, and if you picked alchemy like me, the bombs blasting monsters to pieces. Once you get that sweet kill animation, the dust settles, and you take that monster trophy, it is peak Witcher roleplay satisfaction. However, for me, the peak immersion with proper preparation is when you don't need to check your bestiary anymore. You've been immersed as Geralt for so long, you now have the same knowledge he does regarding monsters. When your player and their character meld in terms of knowledge, that's when you know you did a fantastic job as a game dev. I'd take 10 unique Witcher-style contracts over 100 trash mob encounters any day. Now, there is nothing wrong with wanting a power fantasy where you just mow down hordes of enemies. However, I personally feel that getting that sweet spot of immersion and memorability by taking cues from The Witcher's proper preparation can only be a plus to your game. To make the most out of this system, I'd advise you to play on the Blood and Broken Bones difficulty. It's just difficult enough to make all the proper preparation matter, but not so difficult it ruins the fun. If I were to put everything mentioned above in simple terms, I'd say the game that prioritizes a slow burn method of facing and overcoming your goals will always be more impactful than one which kind of shows you all it has in the beginning. Now that I've shown you how The Witcher 3 does proper preparation, let's give it a proper definition. Proper preparation is when a creator adds immersive and natural steps before a cathartic moment in the story. Ideally, the steps are aligned with the lore of the story as well. Finally, the creator makes sure the execution and payoff of following said steps is worth it. So now you have the examples and definition. Let's see what lessons we can learn from it. I'd like to reiterate one more time, proper preparation is not min-maxing. It is a multi-step immersion tool through gameplay, so if you're a game developer, don't make your game only playable through min-maxing. You hear me? No fucking min-maxing! In other words, you are delaying the gratification of victory through immersive, ideally lore-appropriate steps. So, in order to use proper preparation, properly, these are the questions you have to ask yourself. Can I think of 2 to 3 steps a character in my story takes before an important battle or decision? How lore-related can I make these steps? What kind of reward/satisfaction can I offer when they complete these steps? Perhaps your character needs a certain set of tools or magics ready before they take on a powerful foe. If the character does go out of their way to take these steps, see that they are rewarded with some appropriate lore, or that such preparation is very lore accurate. Finally, make sure there is a proper catharsis at the moment of execution. The proper preparation has to be immersive, yes, but also highly rewarding. Otherwise, you will lose people. If you're a screenwriter or a novelist, you don't have the luxury of giving your audience hands-on experience of proper preparation. That's why it's so crucial for you to show the character's preparation process. You don't even have to explain the process right away, just as long as the end result is super satisfying. Now, game designers, The Witcher 3 alone gives you a pretty good roadmap on how to implement proper preparation. However, if you only implement a single step of proper preparation, for example, learning enemy weaknesses before battle or setting up proper positioning, it will still have a huge boost on your game. One last bit of warning, despite all the benefits of using proper preparation, you have to make it optional. If you force people to do it, it will feel more like a chore rather than a fun gameplay aspect that they chose. This is why the second step of matching proper preparation with lore is key, as people will be more inclined to use it if it makes sense in the context of the world. And of course, greater damage, rewards, or conversation outcomes are key to making PP work. That's short for proper preparation. Just shut up. Once the majority of your players see it is both lore appropriate and fun, trust me, they will use it and enjoy the game more. So now that you are properly prepared with the lessons of this segment, let's move on to a very niche lesson from a very niche game, but I kid you not, Temple Legends, I don't think I've come across a game in the 20 plus years since Gothic 2's release that applied it so well. This is tragic because a story with an evolving world leaves stories with static worlds in the dust. So let's jog our memory on how it's done. If you watched my Lessons from Gaming Gothic 1 video, you'll remember how I praised the reactive world of the colony. How the NPCs would react to the choices you made, whether good or bad, and you'd see the consequences of those choices play out. However, you'll also remember that I criticized how this reactivity of the world dries up by the end of the game. The impact of the decisions you made is greatly weakened so that the story can reach its conclusion. I am very glad to say, however, that Gothic 2 solved this issue in a marvelous way. The developers did this by upgrading their reactive world to an evolving world. Let me explain what I mean. In the story and setting section, I already mentioned how the story setup of the first chapter implies that several threats are encroaching upon the island of Khorinis. The Orcish threat, the bandits in the countryside, and the Army of Darkness in the Valley of Mines are all mentioned or hinted at in some way or another. However, all this story setup would mean little if the world did not reflect the writing. Fortunately, Gothic 2 masterfully blends the writing of the story with the gameplay of its world. In the first chapter, as you explore the world, you'll find only small signs of the things to come. An orc scout deep in the woods, keeping watch on the roads in and out of the city. Bandits blockading bridges and taking over buildings. Undead rising in abandoned cemeteries. The best part of all? You're nowhere near strong enough to take on these threats. So, just like a lot of the citizens of the island, all you can do is observe and take notes. Delayed gratification. Later, at the beginning of Chapter 3, after getting stronger, gaining more influence, and getting more comfortable with the island's countryside, you encounter
Surrender while you can. There is no escape for you.
Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance! But not for me. Come here, you Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Come on, 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 get the fuck. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
There he is.
Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. The Seekers. Powerful dark magicians with the ability to corrupt your mind to the point you can't even sleep. Twisted servants of the dark god Belial, now spread across the Khorinis countryside, readying the terrain for the arrival of the Umbral legions. And now you have to fight them, not in some small story-designated area, but almost everywhere. On the farms, in the fields, on the roads, and near the city itself. The Seekers are a constant threat. The only areas free of them are the city of Khorinis, the Fire Monastery, and a mostly forgotten region of the island. Now, every place you visited, every area you thought you knew, is a potential death trap. The sense of comfort and complacency you gain in the first 2 chapters goes out the window. A new layer of gameplay emerges just from adding a few NPCs to the world. Glorious. But that is not the final stage of the evolving world. The best is yet to come. Remember the dialogue with Pharos that helps the main Obe of Gothic 2 peak? Well, not long after that conversation you enter chapter 5 of the story. Here the story setup and gameplay changes work together to bring Gothic 2's evolving world to its peak. While the story setup begins with the rumors of the Orcish threat, the gameplay finishes by showing their arrival. Orc war bands led by elite warriors have now arrived on the island and taken key positions in the countryside. Most likely they are hoping to further cripple the island's supply chains and prepare it for the arrival of their main invasion force. Just like that, the ongoing background event mentioned by Pharos has arrived on the shores of Khorinis. Not with the same intensity, but just enough for you to feel the escalation of the dire situation, thus further immersing yourself in the lore and story. But that's not all. Soldiers from the Army of Darkness have spilled out from the Valley of Mines, making the dark caves of the island their home. In these caves, they've hidden the dark progeny of their evil masters, the Dragon Eggs. But that's not all. Remember how I said that the Seekers can corrupt your mind until you can't even sleep? Yeah, that is a prelude to possession. In this state, an individual, driven to near insanity by a lack of sleep, will be slowly made to serve the enemy. So, the enemy has attacked on 3 fronts, with the Orcish warbands, by implanting dragon eggs in the countryside, and by possessing people across the island. Why is this relevant? Because unlike in Gothic 1, where the choice of faction becomes almost irrelevant by the end, in Gothic 2 the choice of faction unlocks 3 unique quest chains, one for each faction. The Paladins deal with the Orc bands, the Dragon Hunters track down the dragon eggs, and the Fire Mages deal with the possession epidemic spreading across the island. Since you can only join one faction per playthrough, I don't have to tell you what this does for the replay value, and making the player feel like their choices actually matter. So let's sum this all up. By upgrading their reactive world to an evolving one, the team at Piranha Bytes not only fixed the lack of choices seen in the latter half of Gothic 1, but also created a living, breathing world with 3 distinct stages of evolution. It is because of these stages that Gothic 2 is such a replayable gem. The journey through these stages is something I have not experienced in any other game to this day. If there is another game that has this kind of journey, please recommend it to me in the comments below. I'll gladly provide you with some tobacco in exchange for this information. My tobacco supplier is a really solid guy.
My name is Abu Jin ibn Jadir ibn Omar Khalid bin Haji al-Sharidi. I am a seer and a prophet, an astrologer and a purveyor of tobacco.
Now, what lessons can be learned from Gothic 2's evolving world? Well, there are many, but I'll try and cover the most important ones. The good news is that the main lesson is pretty universal whether you're a game designer or a storyteller in another medium. Exercise restraint. Give your world or story the slow burn effect it needs to stick in the minds of your audience as a fantastic journey. Mention all the cool plot elements you came up with, but keep them in the background for a while. Let your audience first experience your world without the effects of your villain or some other threatening force. Then, bit by bit, show the impact of your ongoing background events as they slowly leave the background. Create at least 3 different stages for your world or story, each stage raising the stakes slightly while still allowing your audience to take in the change they see before their eyes. Take your audience on a journey from rumor.
I could have sworn I saw an orc over there on the edge of the woods 2 days ago. Since then, I've kept at least one eye open at night.
To glorious action. I'd also like to be more specific on how to apply these lessons to different mediums. If you're a storyteller working within the medium of books, TV series, or movies, here's how you can apply the evolving world lesson to your setting. Try to make use of multiple point of view characters. One character perspective for each stage of the evolving world will give your audience that sense of an escalating situation. You can use subtle foreshadowing through descriptions and dialogue to imply the existence of a background force that is slowly changing the world. If you're vague enough in your description of what's to come, you'll create fertile ground for audience debate. This in turn will drive audience engagement through the roof, and their appreciation for the final stage of escalation in your story. If you're a game designer, it seems simple, right? Just add a bunch of new NPCs to the world every now and then, and voila! An evolving world. However, that's only part of the equation. First of all, you need to properly set up the arrival of these NPCs. This can be done through environmental storytelling, NPC rumors, and a strong ongoing background event. Then you have to fine-tune the rate at which these NPCs spawn. Don't do it all at once and ruin the slow burn. Try, for example, to time the appearance of a new group of enemy NPCs after the player is warned of the enemy's progress in the world. Finally, give the enemy more than one way in which they affect the world. In other words, give the player at least 3 different problems. Then, based on the faction/gameplay style they chose, give them a unique questline to solve one of these three problems. Only then do you introduce all these new powerful NPCs, each related to one of the faction questlines. This ensures the players will be able to explore the final stage of the world in three unique ways. The replay value and memorability of your game will go through the roof. Whew, that was a lot to cover, but ultimately quite worth it in the end. Ah, the immersive introduction, the most repeated lesson of the first Temple semester. And with good reason too. As the name implies, when applied properly, it can keep a far greater number of people hooked on your story and get them excited to see the end. Now, unlike its name, which is really simple, the way in which you apply the immersive introduction is not. So let's see how to do it right. If you've been paying attention during this semester, the games that prioritize immersion at the beginning of the story are the ones that use this tool. Divinity Original Sin 2 is no exception, although it does not use it as well as KOTOR 2 or Neverwinter Nights 2 due to a bit too much text window use and its shorter length. The immersive interactivity of Divinity Original Sin 2 begins in my second favorite type of intro setting, a ship. You wake up dazed and confused with a source-suppressing collar around your neck, strapped to a crude table. A dominatrix magister lets you know the sedative will wear off soon, and you should come and speak with her. Strange machinery and symbolism, lore hidden in small notes and books, and the eerie creaking and rocking of the ship all set the mood perfectly. Right from the get-go, you are given a chance to naturally interact with the environment, learn about the world and your situation, and get your first look at the amazing dialogue system, which incorporates both your skills and your background. Now, the sign of a properly implemented immersive introduction is when the gameplay mechanics aren't just info dumped on you, but you learn to use them as you play. For example, your first real use of proper speech checks can save you from a tough fight with a ship guard. Your first quest, a murder investigation, teaches you the importance of interacting with the game world as much as possible. Talking with the NPCs on the ship reveals not only more about the world, but also the not-so-obvious game mechanics, like the elf's ability to read the memories of a person by licking or eating their flesh. You even get a chance to learn more about the world through your own character's words. However, the immersive introduction of Divinity Original Sin 2 wouldn't be half as good if they just left it at the journal entry. Ooh, your source powers are really spooky, they attract scary monsters, and proceed to not show any of it. Thankfully, that is not the case here. As you near the exit of the lowest deck, you are not told, but you see what happens when a sorcerer is uncollared. You are knocked out by an outburst of source coming from the mad sorceress woman. The entire deck is now littered with blood and corpses, as the ship seems even more unstable than before. Something is coming. This is great because it not only shows the consequences of using your power, but also removes the issue of intro sections becoming boring when you have no stakes. And believe me, the stakes are on, as now you need to get the hell off this ship. After being introduced to Rivellon's version of mustard gas, you finally make it to the top deck of the ship. Your first fight isn't with a pack of wolves in a super scripted setting while some old bald guy yells in your ear.
Your health is low. Do you have any potions or food?
No, it's with a group of eldritch abominations lured here by the very power you wield, while an even bigger abomination threatens to break the ship in the background. Finally, you get a nice character-defining moment, in which you can leave behind your future companions or go below deck yourself to try and save them. If you choose to do so, you will be successful, but nearly at the cost of your own life. The Voidwoken monster emerges from the ocean and breaks the ship. You plummet to the depths, but are saved by a mysterious higher power, hinting at your role later in the story. While relatively short, especially compared to the immersive introductions of KOTOR 2 and Neverwinter Nights 2, the immersive introduction of Divinity Original Sin 2 teaches you naturally about A, the state of the world, B, how you interact with this world, and C, what kind of enemy you will be facing in the future. Now that we've seen how Larian used the immersive introduction to hype you up for the rest of the story, let's give it a proper definition. Arhon Johnny, play the clip. Okay, Archon Johnny, you are officially banned from using the projector. Fucking give me that! An immersive introduction is when a creator, usually a game designer, immerses you into their world through a natural, appropriate tutorial. The actions taken in this tutorial are appropriate to the situation and story. Finally, when done well, it gets you excited for learning more about both the setting and the rest of the main story. So now that we know how the immersive introduction is implemented and its definition, let's see what we can learn from it. First, a warning to all game designers. Do not have your NPCs talk about controls in-game, just do not do it.
Just let me kill people, damn it.
To look around, look around.
This is not cool.
If you don't want to waste your time, a short pop-up window will do, but my recommendation is always letting the player learn the controls through gameplay. This can be done through skill checks, challenges, or lore-specific missions. The equivalent of this mistake for novelists and screenwriters is a character blatantly going, "Well, as you know," and then just info-dumping the audience into oblivion. Instead, you could do an immersive introduction with strong visuals and show the character's thought process. Now, the most important part for all creators is asking the right questions. What natural means of exposition and teaching do I have at my disposal? How can I use these tools in a way appropriate to the setting and story? And finally, how can I use this section to foreshadow key moments later in the story? So instead of a journal entry about how dangerous something is, show it. Instead of a wall of text exposition dump on the world state, try weaving it naturally through a conversation with an NPC. And finally, if some grand moment or battle awaits your characters in the story later, foreshadow it on screen, and make it have an impact on the character. Now, game designers, if you have a character with a certain power that is core to the identity of the game, make the immersive introduction about that power. What better way to teach a gamer how to play a game and immerse them in the story than having them use the power right away and see its full effects in action? Screenwriters and novelists, my warm recommendation is always to use a goal/mission immersive introduction. That way, exposition and immersion are achieved through observing the actions of the characters, not just their words. A group of mercs getting ready for an assignment, detectives exploring a crime scene, or members of an order going on a specific mission. All these will do wonders for both immersion and also letting your audience naturally learn more about your world. If implemented properly, you'll make sure that the majority of your audience stays along for the ride. It will be an evergreen segment of your story that will never be a chore for your audience to go through again. It doesn't even have to be an uber action-packed introduction, just one in which the actions of the characters pique the audience interest about the world and leave the audience with a smile.
Passing from one generation to the next. There's always been a Baggins living here under the hill in Bag End.
With the lessons of immersive introduction completed, let's move on to... And finally, we close on the easiest narrative tool to fuck up, the Universe Breaker. However, if you are careful and implement it in the right way, man, the heights your story will reach... Well, let's just say it will be a while until other stories catch up to your level. Let's all then take a look at one of the best, maybe the best example of a Universe Breaker done right. So, a Universe Breaker is a narrative tool best used when a creator has the intent to critique or deconstruct the setting. It represents an intentional break in the rules of reality or a collectively accepted mindset within a setting. Its main purpose is to offer a more refreshing point of view on an already established IP, thus re-energizing the audience. The Universe Breaker can be a character, an item, or an event within a setting. I'll keep spoilers for this 21-year-old game to a minimum, however, in order to learn from KOTOR 2's Universe Breaker, we have to cover some important details. So, what is the Universe Breaker of KOTOR 2? Well, KOTOR 2 has three actually. Kreia, the Exile, and Malachor 5. Let's start with Kreia first, since she's more of an ideological Universe Breaker than a physical one. So, Eren Kai, Darth Treya, or just Kreia, is a former Jedi Consular and Sith Lord, and during KOTOR 2, a mentor figure to your character. It was a very clever narrative choice to have her appear as a wise old mentor character like Obi-Wan in the original trilogy. This made us comfortable enough to approach her, listen, and finally experience her universe-breaking ideology. It starts out slowly at first. A hint on how to look at the world here and there, and eventually as you gain influence with her, you can just see how much of a universe-breaking perspective Kreia actually holds. In her youth she upheld the ideals of the Jedi, then she fell to become one of the Sith, and in her twilight years she became something of a Force nihilist, having seen its effects on the universe in three different ways. As odd as it sounds, Kreia actually does seek balance in the Force, in her own way. You can see this, for example, in the way she critiques you whenever you upset this balance. She also emphasizes actually listening to the Force and understanding where and how it operates in the universe. Finally, she is very clear on what kind of relationship you should have with the Force, your lightsaber, and finally your companions. One where you view all three as tools, and never as something that defines you. She is very much a grind-set Sigma. And here's the great thing about this pace of revelations. By first introducing her as a wise old mentor character, and then slowly turning her into the universe breaker that she is, you can't help but care about her. Seriously, I don't care she was a Sith Lord at one point, it just breaks my heart to look at this.
I'm gonna kill you. All you.
Perhaps this was also intentional. Making Kreia appear to be an old, frail woman is what makes us care more about her, and thus listen to her. Once we're in this empathy state, we are in the perfect condition to get a new perspective on the Star Wars universe. And boy do we get it.
It is said that the Force has a will. It has a destiny for us all. I wield it, but it uses us all, and that is abhorrent to me, because I hate the Force. I hate that it seems to have a will, that it would control us to achieve some measure of balance when countless lives are lost. But in you, I see the potential to see the Force die, to turn away from its will, and that is what pleases me. You are beautiful to me, Exile. A dead spot in the Force, an emptiness in which its will might be denied. I use it as I would use a poison, and in the hopes of understanding it, I will learn the way to kill it. But perhaps these are the excuses of an old woman who has grown to rely on a thing she despises.
You have to understand, up to this point in time, hell, even in the present day, nobody questioned the nature of the Force in such a way. And the real beauty here is that this fresh perspective came from a place of hatred. You see, Chris Avallone was not a fan of working in the Star Wars universe, and the Force specifically. However, because he had respect for the canon, he was able to criticize it in a way that pays homage to the Star Wars IP. This is why to this day I think this is the best Star Wars story ever told. If you want to see a video that covers this in far greater detail, I'll leave a link to Core Ideas videos on how KOTOR 2 criticizes Star Wars. I highly recommend watching it. Now, Kreia would only be half as effective as an ideological universe breaker without the two other physical universe breakers, the Exile and Malachor 5. Again, I won't spoil the mechanics of her plan, but basically both the Exile and Malachor 5 are wounds in the Force, dead spots where the will of the Force can be denied. Basically, he who is a wound in the Force can actually use it without being influenced by it. This is huge. Just on a pure metaphysical level, it breaks the Star Wars lore in a fascinating way, and not in a "they fly now" bullshit. But here's the best part, and what makes Kreia my favorite villain in Star Wars. She plans to use this Force wound technique to kill the Force across the entire galaxy. Of course, this does not come to pass, but just the fact that it was possible puts KOTOR 2 in its own league. Oh, and by the way, this isn't just some narrative fluff about making wounds in the Force. No, we literally see Kreia using this power on the 3 strongest Jedi in the galaxy. Yes, the same power that reaction YouTubers use on smaller channels. Just to reiterate, this entire unique perspective came from both a place of hatred towards a certain narrative element in the Star Wars IP and respect for the fans and lore. This attitude, along with the Universe Breaker, is something we can all learn from, so let's get to it. Great news for the Universe Breaker, it is absolutely a universal lesson, and all creators regardless of medium can use it. First things first, however, a warning to all creators. Do not use this narrative tool lightly. Out of all the tools we discussed during this temple semester, this is without a doubt the easiest one to mess up. If you use the Universe Breaker carelessly, you can cripple your franchise before you even have a chance to tell your story. So, the most important step you need to take is asking the right questions. What is something that I, and ideally a lot of other people, dislike about this setting? How can I challenge this idea while staying respectful to the IP canon? And most important of all, what kind of perspective am I trying to bring in with this Universe Breaker? For example, let's say I am skeptical about the logic that people hate a certain group of individuals who are literally the only effective defense between them and inhuman monsters. Now, the bad way to implement a Universe Breaker would be to A. Add some annoying self-insert character to criticize the IP in a horrific, fourth-wall breaking, immersion-destroying way. Or B. To have this group of individuals completely destroyed, which then destroys other elements of the setting, and then turning to the fans and going, "See, this is why the thing you like bad and it's logic not smart." The proper way to use the Universe Breaker in this scenario would be, for example, to add a character that purposefully orchestrates monster attacks on human settlements, so that the average populace and thus the audience realizes how much this certain group is needed in this world. That way you criticize the logic that the fans got used to in previous iterations of the story, while paying respect to the core identity of the franchise. And of course, if this example doesn't do it for you, then Krea's crusade against the Force is also another wonderful guide to follow. All in all, no matter what type of creator you are, if you cautiously use the Universe Breaker, you can not only give a unique perspective into a somewhat stagnant franchise, but actually breathe life back into it. If things align well, your Universe Breaker story can actually be the best story in this IP, like Knights of the Old Republic 2. Now, I don't mean to sound pretentious, but you really can't appreciate KOTOR 2 as a kid. You need to play it as an adult to understand just how awesome of a story perspective it really is for the entire Star Wars IP. In fact, Temple Legends, most people won't really get it. You need a higher IQ to understand this Goddamn shapeshifters. Sorry, Temple Legends. In all seriousness, the Universe Breaker is what makes KOTOR 2 the best Star Wars story ever told. So, with the lessons of the Universe Breaker out of the way, let's move on to... So that's it, my Temple Legends. You've now been properly reminded of the very best of the best from the first Temple semester. As I mentioned in the finale, the focus of the upcoming second Temple semester will be accessibility and greater consistency of lessons. And I'm very excited for everyone to see what the second Temple semester is all about. If you are new to the Temple and this was your first video, first of all, thank you for staying until the end. And second, if you like the recapped lessons you've seen so far, feel free to indulge in the remaining 9 or so hours of the first Temple semester. If you can, please like, comment and subscribe, as it helps with the upkeep of the Temple, and helps those who are still climbing find their way here. Have a safe path down the mountain, and I'll see you soon in the next semester of the Temple.